true war. You have seen skirmishes, petty squabbles over the rancid remains of your false emperor's imperium of fools. Tiger eyes have seen. I have seen with tiger eyes. I have walked over fields of wrecked armor, climbed mountains of dead engines. Your petty list of honors is but a footnote to the glory that the ride I have writ out upon the galaxy.
So, if you've been looking at my recent polls, you could probably tell I've been on a bit of a mech binge lately. Specifically Western mechs, the slow, hulking masses of steel and guns that march around blowing up everything they come across. This is the game that got me looking around for more mech games to play lately, and you'll see why soon enough. Welcome to Callan 9, a desolate wasteland that exists for one purpose and one purpose only: Titans. This is Adeptus Titanicus.
Princeps Helena, take your maniple high and harass the enemy's flank on that side. Princeps Maxim, I want your maniple taking the fight to the enemy. Secure and hold the key positions I have identified for you to deny the enemy their desired fire bases. May the Omnissiah guide your fire.
The visuals are okay, I suppose. This is a Warhammer 40k game, so we're dealing with a setting known for insane set pieces, and we're specifically dealing with Titans here. The massive machines of war that are supposed to be some of those powerful weapons the Imperium has. Unfortunately, it doesn't feel quite right here. The Titans look cool, yeah, but their movement and weapons don't have any real weight or power to them. They're just slow. And you rarely get a feel for just how massive these things are supposed to be, since you're almost always marching around empty spaces shooting at other Titans. The environment is definitely the worst part though. While the Titans at least look cool, the environments consist of fairly low poly structures and basic dirt textures. Nothing special to really give off that 40k vibe other than the Gothic architecture. Nothing about this really screams Forge world that exists purely to construct machines of war, you know? The music is pretty much the same situation here. An attempt was certainly made to give off the over-the-top feel of 40k, but in the end the music all just sounds like generic booming in the background. It also doesn't help that this seems to be the only music the game has, meaning that there are little to no tracks for quieter moments or simply moments where something isn't immediately being blown up, which there's plenty of. This also means that when the loud music finally stops, you're left in utter silence. And sometimes the sound cuts out entirely, music, sound effects, and everything, even when a Titan is attacking something. All in all, very generic and sometimes prone to glitches. There is one part of the presentation that I think is exceptional, however: the cutscenes. The game has a campaign mode, and after every other mission or so, you get this comic book-esque cutscene to progress the story, and the art in them is genuinely really cool looking. I really like the effort put into making these panels interesting to look at when story is happening. Maybe that's where the presentation budget went.
Serve this machine as you would have it fight for you.
Since I mentioned earlier that this game has a campaign mode, that means there's a story here. It's a pretty basic one, though. The game's set on the
core-walled Forge world of Callan 9 lies between the prime imperial worlds of Golgotha and Alaric, on the western side of the Ultima Segmentum, just beneath the newly created Cicatrix Maledictum. Callan 9 is of great importance to the Imperium. It is one of few Forge worlds equipped to accommodate the mightiest of the Emperor's war engines, the Titans of the Adeptus Titanicus.
Yeah, that, and the planet is under siege by the forces of chaos. You play as Princeps Maxim, part of the team sent by local Imperium forces to make use of Callan 9's Titans to push back the Chaos advance and eventually purge them from the planet completely. The story's fine for what it is, an excuse to see Titans fight each other, and it fits the setting. This kind of thing happens all the time in 40k. What is notable, though, is the voice acting. I don't know who they got to voice most of these characters, but they really put some effort into those performances. These guys were nailing the dramatic flair with even the most basic sentences. I love it.
Princeps, any orders? Our hunting packs have silenced the defense lasers here in the Sector Gamma. The mass conveyor is clear for landing.
Acknowledged with thanks, Princeps Helena. Well done. Both of you. A solid start to our campaign to liberate this forged world. Bring your maniple to converge with the others on Archdomum's landing zone.
Now, time for the big part, the gameplay. A key thing to remember here is that this is based on the tabletop game with the same name, and it really shows. Every mechanic, from movement to stats to point composition to damage rolls and saves, this game is extremely loyal to its tabletop counterpart. Now, that's fine for people who just want a way to play the tabletop online, especially since that seems to be its main purpose, but that also means a lot of stuff gets less treatment. The overall quality of life is pretty mediocre, having to constantly go through the same looking menus to get what you want. There aren't that many options to customize your gameplay, like how I typically prefer click and drag cameras for games like this, but you either have to border scroll here, which doesn't quite work for a guy with a second monitor, or keyboard, which is just janky because you can't control the speed of it. On top of that, the game doesn't do a very good job of explaining the board game to you. There's a tutorial, which I actually missed the first time around, but it covers the very fundamental basics to make sure you can walk around and actually play the game. You really need to go digging to learn about the intricacies of how all the mechanics actually work together through the various text walls that are sporadically placed throughout the game. It definitely comes off as something built by Titanicus players for Titanicus players, because this game assumes you know a good deal about the tabletop before going in. I still can't figure out the specifics between how all the different weapons function. All I know is don't equip a Warhound with 2 plasma cannons, because plasma cannons need time to charge after being shot. Would have been great if I knew that beforehand. Beyond that, the game just gets glitchy sometimes. The developers proudly advertise their cinematic camera, and boy does the camera love itself too. Thankfully, you can turn it off, but still, a feature so proudly spoken of on your store page probably shouldn't be allowing this to happen.
As ours.
There are other weird quirks too, like a Titan just not firing when given a move and fire order, or melee hits feeling like they're just not connecting. Also, if you're really gonna get this game, since the campaign is really the only thing on here other than freeform skirmish, just play Campaign Plus mode. The only difference is that in Plus you can actually build your team rather than let the game decide. The idea seems to be that normal campaign gives you some kind of semi-balanced challenge, but a lot of default setups just seem completely unreasonable for anyone that's not an established player. And overall, that's how I'd probably summarize the gameplay. An unpolished and janky attempt at recreating the board game that really doesn't seem to care for new players that much.
The astropathic missive is received by an Imperial outpost on the nearby world of Talgeta.
The Chaos Marines are supported by Legio Furians. We are putting up a staunch defense, but we cannot hold indefinitely against such firepower.
Emperor, protect us. Relay this to Lucius and McCragg immediately.
From Lucius to McCragg, the Imperial war machine swings into action, led by the storied Legio Asterum.
Prepare your Legio, Princeps Senioris Select. You will meet the Tiger Eyes upon the field of battle once more. Astorum walks.
It shall be so, Fabricator General.
And that is Adeptus Titanicus. I know Dominus is at the end there, but come on, that subtitle is just unnecessary. All in all, I can tell that this game was a genuine attempt to recreate a board game the developers seem to love, but it just doesn't work for me. Yeah, it faithfully recreates the mechanics of the board game, but they really don't do anything to take advantage of the fact that they're using a digital medium here. None of the quality of life or gameplay improvements that could have been made here were, likely due to their desire to be as faithful to the original as possible. Sometimes a little change can be good, I'm just saying. The game is alright for maybe a few hours, but that's about it. It's definitely not worth the default price. Get it at a decent discount if you really want it. If not, I'd say just play Battletech. This has been TheRatMan, and I will see you all later. And last but not least, a special thank you shout out to my Patreon. With $5 a month pledge is a sad old man eating Pringles by himself. Thank you for the $5.